The other thing with UCF that everybody wants to talk about right now, the return of Scott Frost. So, how excited should UCF fans be about this? Is this an issue where it's like, hey, we're nostalgic for some better times, but maybe we're not going to be able to recapture that magic? Or is this the move that UCF needs to get back on that horse? What's y'all's opinion of the Scott Frost hire?
I think there's nobody that you can hire other than Scott Frost and kind of knows the unique identity of our school and kind of plugged into it and has seen it at the highest level. And I also think it's interesting too, is just like, you're going to have Scott Frost coming back to a conference where he ran that conference for the first few years he was in it. He won the Big 12. He won national championships at Nebraska, albeit it was a lot different conference. But I think he brought back an energy that I don't think, albeit short of like Nick Saban, came out of retirement or someone else, to kind of come back and give it another go. We needed that shot in the arm. It was, last season, 4-8. I think Gus's big thing the entire time here was just he never landed on a proper quarterback. And he was just kind of frazzled up and down. And, we'd, like we were talking a little bit earlier before we started recording, we'd win a game in Fort Worth, on a comeback drive, and we're thinking we're in the driver's seat, just kind of turn that corner. And then the only other conference game we win is against Arizona later in the year. So it's just a little bit odd when you kind of see how that year kind of came, but it feels like a fever dream now. But we got Scott Frost back. I think we're excited to see if he can recapture that magic. I think it's an itch that we'll scratch and we can kind of put it to bed. If it wasn't for his work that he did with us here in those 2 years, I don't even know if we're in the Big 12 right now. Sure. So I'm glad that, we can kind of have that conversation. And I think we just need to have some patience. I think he gets our identity. I think, he has a little bit of a redemption arc he wants to do for himself, as well as with a lot of his staff that he has kind of assembled, like the Alex Grinch on the DC side. So I'm excited to see what he can do. I think we're cautiously optimistic. I think in the back of our mind, our heart is just like, oh my God, this is exciting. But in the back of our head, we're just like, we were hate watching a lot of Nebraska games and saw how those things went by the wayside. Yeah. So that could rear its ugly head once again.
This is a really unique situation where it's not unheard of for a college coach to come back to a team that he had coached in the past. Obviously, West Virginia is experiencing that right now with Rich Rod returning. And, there have been other cases like this. But I don't know that there have been other cases where the coach that left before they returned wasn't really sure they wanted to leave in the first place. And Scott Frost has been very open about the fact that when he was recruited to go coach for Nebraska, when he left UCF in 2017, that he didn't necessarily want to do that. I mean, he ultimately did go. I think there was a lot of pressure on him to go return to his Nebraska roots and be with the team. Yeah, I mean, he did what he had to do, but he's been very open with the fact that it was a very, very difficult decision. He did not necessarily want to leave UCF, and he's been very open with the fact that the one place that he did want to come back to was UCF. And if you've caught any of his interviews as of late, the question's been, why UCF? Why are you coming back? And he's like, look, I really never wanted to leave. This is the only place I would consider coming back to coach for college. He had a comfy gig coaching for the Rams and Sean McVay just recently. And I think this is a pretty unique thing for him to come back. And that passion is what UCF fans are really looking for his tenure, his second tenure here in Orlando. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
Caveat to that too. I think we're the only Power 4 job in the country that would allow him just to come back without something at a G5 level, kind of like, Rich Rod did the damn thing at Jacksonville State for a couple years, and he still has it. So I think Frost still has to prove that. But again, it was very extraordinary circumstances on both tenures of his time here and also at Nebraska. So let's see what happens, man. And he was electrifying offenses. I mean, he was a guru at Oregon with the Mariotas of the world and just kind of putting things together. So the overlap is just crazy if you think about that 2018 Fiesta Bowl where you have Scott Frost getting on a plane after that wins at the Peach Bowl when he's getting on the plane to go to Nebraska, and we're looking across Gus Malzahn at Auburn and not realize we're going to have him in 4 years. You just can't write this stuff, It's kind of just like dumb, crazy UCF luck that it's just lore.
And then getting sick of him.
Yeah, he got sick of us. I mean, depending on who you ask.
Yeah.
I mean,
Insane.
I would add on to that, if you had asked anybody when they hired Gus Malzahn to be the new head coach at UCF several years ago, everybody would have told you that was a home run hire. There's nobody better for the job. After Josh Heupel left to go to Tennessee, it felt like we upgraded. We got an SEC coach coming in. He was recruiting like crazy. He was doing very well getting, higher star players to come into the program. It just, on paper, it should have worked. And for some reason, on the field, it didn't play out. And now we're back with Scott Frost. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, y'all both mentioned Rich Rod, right? And that's the obvious comparison. You've got two teams in the same conference doing the same thing, bringing back the coach from a handful of years ago that they were really, really great with. So which of these two hires do you think we're going to look back at it in, 5, 6, 7 years and say that was the one that was going to work, and why is it Scott Frost?
I think here's the thing. I mean, Rich Rod is coming in there a little bit more hitting the ground running. I mean, he's back in it. He's kind of warmed up already, at the G5 level. I think there's a fervor in West Virginia that's unlike anywhere in our conference, anywhere in the country. I mean, those people live and breathe. There's no other professional team in the state. So, the Mountaineers are everything. I think if, he had them on the cusp of going to a national championship if they didn't lose that game to Pitt on rivalry weekend, So I think we'll look back on, I think we're okay with, if Scott Frost gets his little bowling couple years, we make a run at Arlington. And if maybe it doesn't pan out, but we had a couple looks at it, that's fine. But I think in the long term, I think if you looked at 3 to 4 years, I think you're going to see Rich Rod ahead of the race. But I think in the long term, for the resources that we have here, and they've already had their ramp up in a power conference, quote unquote. I think Scott Frost will get there a couple more times before Rich Rod does in 7 years.
I think it's definitely going to be a slow burn for Scott Frost at UCF. If you're a rational UCF fan, you don't really expect much out of this first season. It's kind of a total reset for the program when Gus left. A lot of our players transferred out, as is the norm nowadays. Scott Frost is going to have to get up to speed with NIL and the transfer portal, things that weren't really a thing when he was coaching at UCF at the time, and he only saw briefly at Nebraska. So I think that there's going to be some acclimation to getting used to those programs. And as Dali hinted at, we are just now getting that, that full share like West Virginia has been getting of Big 12 revenue. So there's going to be a slow burn. There's going to be some buildup for UCF to play catch up in their resources and their ability and their notoriety and all these things. So I think that they will come with time, but it's certainly not going to be an immediate effect like you might see with Rich Rod.
Great answers. Great